There was a moment recently when someone sat alone with thoughts they could no longer silence. The world around them kept moving, conversations continued, phones vibrated, lights flickered through windows, yet inside their heart, everything had slowed down to a single question that carried your name. What they felt for you had grown beyond curiosity long ago. It had moved past attraction, past fascination, past those temporary emotions people try to disguise as love. This was something quieter, deeper, something that kept returning to them in unexpected moments. And what makes this story so important is that they had already begun imagining a future with you before you even realized it. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you inside this unfolding moment. They had rehearsed conversations in their head. Not dramatic speeches, not perfect movie-like confessions, but simple, honest words. The kind of words that only appear when someone is tired of pretending they feel less than they truly do. They imagined how your eyes might look if they finally opened their heart. They imagined your silence afterward. They imagined your smile. They imagined the strange relief that would come from no longer carrying these emotions alone. And slowly, without announcing it to anyone, they started preparing themselves for something life-changing. Yet the strange part is this. The closer they came to revealing everything, the more they discovered something about you that completely shifted the direction of their emotions. Not in a destructive way. Not in anger. Not in disappointment. No, it was something far more emotional than that. It made them stop. It made them rethink everything they believed about you. And for a while, they didn't know whether it brought them closer to you, or made them afraid of losing you before they even had you. There are certain truths about a person that cannot stay hidden forever. Sometimes they appear quietly through small details nobody notices at first. A sentence spoken without realizing its impact. A memory shared casually. A moment of kindness nobody expected. A habit that reveals how deeply someone has been hurt before. They began noticing those hidden pieces inside you one after another, and every discovery affected them more than they expected. Stay till the end. Because this is where the story begins changing shape. At first, they thought they understood you. They believed you were strong in the way most people define strength, calm on the outside, careful with your emotions, difficult to fully read. But then they discovered something unexpected beneath that surface. They realized how much you had carried silently for so long without demanding attention for it. They realized you were the kind of person who continues giving warmth even while privately fighting exhaustion. And suddenly, the version of you they once imagined no longer felt complete. They began seeing someone far more rare than they expected. Someone whose softness had survived situations that could have easily made them cold. That realization stayed with them longer than they wanted to admit. There was one specific night they could not stop thinking about you. The room around them felt unusually still, almost as if time itself was waiting. They replayed every interaction in their mind searching for certainty, but certainty refused to come. Because love becomes complicated when admiration enters it. Before, they only desired closeness with you. But now they respected you in a way that made them nervous. They feared becoming another temporary presence in your life. They feared not being emotionally ready for someone as genuine as you. And this fear did not push them away completely, it pulled them into an emotional conflict they never expected. One part of them wanted to move forward immediately before the moment disappeared forever. Another part whispered that your heart deserved something careful, something honest, something fully prepared. Can you feel the weight of that silence? Because they could. Every day. They started paying attention to details other people ignored. The way you carry yourself when nobody is watching. The way your energy changes when you feel emotionally safe. The way you hide disappointment behind understanding. These things affected them deeply because they began realizing how rarely people truly see you. Most only notice the surface. But they started noticing the spaces between your words. And once someone begins seeing you that clearly, their feelings stop being simple. Something huge is slowly unfolding here. They were close. Unbelievably close, to making a decision that would have changed both of your lives forever. Yet the discovery about you kept echoing in their mind. Not because it ruined their feelings, but because it intensified them beyond what they felt prepared for. They found out that your heart was not ordinary. That your loyalty runs deeper than most people deserve. That when you care completely. And suddenly they understood something terrifying in the most beautiful way possible. If they entered your life carelessly, they could become another person who leaves a scar you never speak about aloud. That realization shook them. People often think love becomes easier once feelings are confirmed. But sometimes confirmation is exactly what creates fear. Because now the possibility becomes real. Now the future feels tangible. Now losing it becomes painful before it even begins. They started wondering whether fate had brought them to you too early. Before they became the version of themselves capable of loving you correctly. And still, despite every doubt, despite every hesitation, despite every moment they tried distracting themselves from you, your presence continued returning to them like a quiet echo they could not escape. Even ordinary things started reminding them of you. Certain songs. Certain phrases. Certain late-night moods when the world becomes honest for a few minutes. And the deeper this feeling grew, the more difficult it became for them to hide what was happening inside their heart. Yet there is one detail they still haven't told anyone. Not friends. Not family. Not even themselves completely. Because admitting it would change everything. They are beginning to realize that what they discovered about you did not stop the proposal from happening, it only changed the reason behind it. And somewhere inside them, another decision is now forming slowly. Carefully, almost invisibly. But before they move forward, there is still one final truth they need to understand about you, and when that realization arrives, nothing between you will remain the same anymore. There is something unusual about the way destiny pauses before changing a person's life. It rarely arrives loudly. Most of the time, it hides inside silence, inside hesitation. Inside those late hours when someone stares at the ceiling pretending their thoughts are under control when they are not. And this person, the one whose heart has been circling around you without rest, has now reached that exact moment. The closer they move toward the truth of what they feel, the more impossible it becomes to return to who they were before you entered their life. Don't skip, because what they are slowly realizing about you is becoming impossible for them to ignore. They tried convincing themselves they only admired you from a distance. They tried turning these emotions into something temporary, something manageable, something they could quietly outgrow before it became too serious. But emotions do not disappear simply because someone wants them to. Especially when those emotions are connected to someone who feels familiar in ways logic cannot explain. That is what unsettled them the most. You did not enter their life loudly. You did not force your way into their thoughts. Somehow, your presence arrived gently, almost invisibly, and yet it changed the emotional atmosphere around them completely. Suddenly, conversations with others felt empty afterward. Certain places felt strange without you there. Even happy moments carried a quiet awareness that something, or someone, was missing. And still, they kept holding back. Not because they lacked feelings, but because they discovered something else about you. Something that made their heart slow down with caution. They realized you are not someone who treats connection casually. You carry emotions deeply, even when you pretend you are fine. You remember things others forget. You hold on to words longer than people realize. And once they understood this about you, they became terrified of approaching your heart carelessly. Stay till the end, because this hesitation is hiding something far more emotional than you think. There was one moment recently that changed everything for them. A conversation they overheard. A memory someone shared about you. A detail so small most people would have ignored it instantly. But not them. They learned how much you have already survived emotionally without becoming bitter toward the world. They learned how many times you gave understanding to people who only offered confusion in return. And something inside them shifted deeply after that. Because suddenly they no longer wanted to simply be loved by you. They wanted to protect the peace inside you that life kept testing over and over again. That feeling caught them off guard. They had never expected love to arrive with responsibility attached to it. Yet every thought about you now carried both affection and fear together. Fear of failing you. Fear of arriving incomplete. Fear of becoming another lesson your heart never asked to learn. So they paused. Not because they stopped loving you, but because their feelings became serious enough to frighten them. Can you imagine what it feels like when someone realizes they could genuinely change their future because of one person? That is where they are now. Standing emotionally between desire and caution. One side of them wants to run toward you without thinking anymore. The other side keeps whispering. Not yet. Not until you are certain you can love them correctly. And this inner conflict has become exhausting for them. Because every day they delay speaking their truth, their feelings grow stronger instead of weaker. They notice everything now. The energy in your voice when you are tired but trying not to show it. The way you become quieter when something hurts you emotionally. The rare moments your guard drops and your real softness appears unexpectedly. These details have become impossible for them to forget. Something important is waiting for you in this part of the story, because what happens next is not accidental. Recently, they almost made the decision. Almost. Their heart was ready. Their emotions were overflowing. They had even imagined exactly how they would tell you everything. But then another realization stopped them in their tracks. They began wondering whether you already sensed what was happening between you both. Because there were moments, subtle moments, where your eyes seemed to understand more than your words admitted. Moments where silence between you felt strangely alive. Moments where it almost felt like both of you were standing near the same emotional doorway, waiting for the other person to move first. And that possibility changed everything for them. Because if you already feel this connection too, then suddenly the risk becomes real. Suddenly rejection is no longer their biggest fear. Losing something meaningful before it fully begins becomes the real fear. They started imagining alternate futures constantly. One where they finally confess everything and your heart opens toward them completely. Another where timing ruins something beautiful before it has a chance to grow. And somewhere between those possibilities, they became emotionally stuck. Yet no matter how confused they feel, one truth keeps returning to them over and over again. You are different from anyone they have ever tried to forget. That realization alone has become impossible to escape. Even when they try distracting themselves, your energy returns unexpectedly. Through memories. Through songs. Through random moments that suddenly feel connected to you for no logical reason at all. And lately, something even stranger has started happening. They have begun imagining not only what it would feel like to confess their love to you, but what it would feel like if someone else reached your heart before they found the courage to speak. That thought alone creates a kind of silence inside them they cannot explain. Because for the first time, they are realizing how deeply they truly care. This is no longer simple attraction. No longer passing emotion. No longer curiosity. It has become something powerful enough to change their decisions, their routines, even the way they imagine their future. And the more they fight it, the clearer it becomes that their heart has already chosen you long ago. But there is still one hidden piece of this story they have not revealed yet. One final discovery about you that arrived unexpectedly, and when they learned it, their entire understanding of this connection changed forever. Because they found out something about your past, something you never openly talk about. And ever since then, the proposal they once imagined so confidently has transformed into something far more emotional, far more careful, and far more serious than either of you may realize right now. Sometimes the most powerful emotions are not the ones people confess immediately, they are the ones that grow quietly while someone is trying desperately to remain composed. And this person, the one standing at the edge of a life-changing decision, has reached a point where silence no longer feels safe for them. Every day they carry these feelings without speaking them aloud, the weight becomes heavier. Not painful, just impossible to ignore anymore. Because somewhere along the way, what they felt for you stopped being a possibility and started becoming part of who they are. Don't skip, because the truth unfolding now is far deeper than a simple love story. It began changing after they discovered something about your past that nobody explained to them directly. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't drama. It was something far quieter than that. A hidden sadness in the way you sometimes protect yourself emotionally. A habit of pulling back right when someone gets close enough to truly understand you. At first they misunderstood it. They wondered if you were uncertain about them, if your distance meant disinterest. But slowly they realized the truth was much more emotional. You had learned how to survive disappointment by pretending you needed less than you actually did. And the moment they understood this, everything inside them softened. Because suddenly your strength looked different to them. It no longer looked like emotional distance. It looked like someone trying to protect a heart that had already carried too much silently. Stay till the end. Because they are beginning to see you in a way very few people ever have. There was a night recently when they almost reached out to tell you everything. Their emotions had become impossible to contain. Your name stayed in their thoughts constantly. They replayed conversations with you over and over, searching for hidden meaning inside every small detail. They wondered if you noticed the way they look at you differently now. They wondered if your silence sometimes hides feelings too. And for several long minutes, they stared at a message they never sent. Not because the words were missing, but because the truth inside those words frightened them. Because once feelings this real are spoken aloud, life changes. There is no returning to emotional safety after that. And still, even while hesitating, they smiled without realizing it. Because the thought of you had become the safest emotional place in their life. Isn't that strange? The very thing that scares them most is also the thing bringing them the deepest peace. That contradiction has consumed them lately. One moment they feel completely certain you are meant to cross paths for a reason. The next moment they become afraid they are romanticizing something too deeply. But every attempt to distance themselves emotionally fails. Because your presence keeps reaching them in unexpected ways. Through memories that appear suddenly in quiet moments. Through phrases that remind them of your voice. Through random emotions they cannot explain logically. It feels as though part of their heart already belongs near you, even if nothing official has been spoken yet. Something important is waiting for you here, because they are finally starting to understand the real reason they hesitated before proposing. It was never because their feelings were weak. It was because their feelings became serious enough to make them question themselves honestly for the first time in years. You made them reflect on who they are emotionally. You made them realize how easy it is to admire someone, but how much harder it is to truly care for them in the way they deserve. They began asking themselves difficult questions quietly. Can I protect their peace instead of disrupting it? Can I love someone who feels things this deeply? Can I stay consistent even during difficult moments? Those questions changed them. Because before you, love felt exciting to them. After you, love began feeling sacred. And they are still adjusting to that realization. Recently, they noticed something else that unsettled their heart completely. They realized you rarely speak about your own emotional needs directly. Instead, you give understanding first. You comfort others first. You make space for everyone else's feelings while quietly carrying your own unanswered emotions alone. And once they recognized that pattern inside you, they could no longer look at you casually again. Suddenly they understood why your energy feels unforgettable. You are not simply someone who enters rooms. You leave emotional impact behind you without trying to. And this person has been carrying that impact everywhere lately. Don't skip, because what they almost did next changed everything. A few days ago, they made a decision. Not fully, not completely, but enough to frighten themselves afterward. They began preparing mentally to finally speak their truth. No more hiding. No more pretending these emotions were temporary. They were ready to move toward you honestly. But then something unexpected happened. Someone asked them a simple question about you, and their reaction revealed more than they intended. The silence that followed exposed everything they had been trying to conceal. In that moment, they realized their feelings for you were no longer invisible to others. People had started noticing the way your name affects them. The way their energy changes around conversations about you. The way their eyes soften without warning. And strangely, instead of denying it, they felt relief. Quiet relief. Because carrying hidden love alone had become exhausting. But there is still one final emotional barrier standing between them and the confession they almost made. One fear they have not fully conquered yet. They are afraid that your heart may still belong to old pain more than future love. Afraid that someone before them made promises that damaged your ability to trust fully again. And because they care so deeply now, they do not want to rush into your life only to awaken wounds you worked hard to quiet. So they continue watching carefully, listening carefully, trying to understand whether your heart is finally ready for the kind of love they want to give you. Yet despite all these fears, despite all this caution, one truth keeps growing stronger every single day: they cannot imagine forgetting you anymore. They have tried becoming logical about this connection. Tried reducing it to coincidence. Tried distracting themselves with routine, work, conversations, anything. But your presence continues returning like something unfinished. Like a chapter their soul refuses to close. And now, after everything they discovered about you, after all the emotions they tried controlling, after all the moments they almost confessed and stopped themselves at the last second, they are beginning to realize something even more powerful. The proposal they once planned in secret was never truly cancelled. It was only delayed, because the love forming inside them became far deeper than they originally understood. And somewhere very soon, sooner than even they expect, a conversation neither of you are fully prepared for is slowly approaching.